back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have everybody here on this Thursday, December 28th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, this is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that, let's get right into what we were going to talk about for today. So starting off the show, we're going to talk about recent news from yesterday. We had some quarterback changes, and most notably, one of them was Russell Wilson being benched. So it's going to be Jarrett Stidham getting the start on Sunday. So we'll get into that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, we'll go through the power rankings that were released this week. Obviously, being off on Monday pushed everything back a day, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about the current standings, where everything is currently at the moment in both conferences, and then we will preview tonight's Thursday night matchup between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about Russell Wilson being benched. So it wasn't just him. There were a couple of other quarterback changes. So there'll be no more Tommy Cutlets. It'll be Tyrod Taylor starting on Sunday against the Rams. And then you also have, for the Commanders, you have Jacoby Brissett taking over for Sam Howell at quarterback against the 49ers. And then you have Jarrett Stidham taking over for Russell Wilson, which is what we're going to talk about as they get ready to take on the LA Chargers. And it definitely is a little bit. Now, you look at the reason for it, so you understand it. But kind of curious move, because the Broncos are still technically in the playoff hunt. I think I went over their odds, I think, yesterday. But they have like a 1.4% chance of making the playoffs, something like that. It's ridiculously low now, especially after losing to the Patriots. And that kind of like sealed Russ's fate, I guess, with the Broncos. Now, it's really from a financial standpoint as to why the Broncos benched him. So he's going to be owed a lot of money. He had a big contract. And the reason for it is, so he's guaranteed $39 million in 2024, whether he's with the team or not. But it's the $37 million that could be guaranteed if he doesn't pass a physical in early March. So if Russ got injured in the final two games, then the Broncos would have to owe him that money. So they don't want to take their chances. So that's why they're benching him, which, again, makes sense. From a financial standpoint, it makes sense. But when you look at the Broncos, again, they still technically have a chance to make the playoffs, and now you're kind of just, punting on the season because now you're putting in Jarrett Stidham. And this is something similar to what the Raiders did with Derek Carr. And the thing that's funny about it is that when the Raiders did it to Derek Carr last year, Jarrett Stidham was the quarterback that replaced him. So now he's replacing Russell Wilson, and on top of that, it's also in the same division. Same division. I mean, you could even look at Josh McDaniels. He was the head coach of the Broncos at one point. Now he's not the one that made this decision. But it's just the funny thing is that Jarrett Stidham is replacing yet another quarterback in this division, and it was basically a year apart. Because again, this happened last year. So yeah, I mean, that trade that the Broncos made with the Seahawks really just did not pay off. And, Russell Wilson really was not Sean Payton's guy. I mean, Sean Payton inherited Russell Wilson. He tried his best to try to, fix him. And listen, Russell Wilson really hasn't had a bad season. It really hasn't been. He's not really the main problem with this team. This team has other issues, but it just really didn't pan out. Because I think there definitely has been a drop off. Obviously from his days in Seattle, not the same player. Because this is a guy that basically carried some of these Seahawks teams. Obviously when the Legion of Boom was no longer a thing, and the defense wasn't as good. Russell Wilson carried the Seahawks. 2018 they had a team that really wasn't that good, and they were able to make the playoffs, and that was because of him. But a lot of people credit Pete Carroll, because look at what Russell Wilson has been since he's left Seattle. He's not the same quarterback, and I was one of those people that was high on Denver. I thought Denver was going to be a good team. He was joining a team that had a good defense, and he had some receivers that you thought could take it to the next level now with an actual quarterback, because Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, they've gone through so many quarterbacks. Finally they had somebody that you thought was going to be someone you could trust, and that really wasn't the case. They just really never got it going. Again, I think Russ has had a decent season. He's definitely been better than what he was last year, but it's not really up to the standard that we're accustomed to seeing, from all those years in Seattle. So, again, from a financial standpoint, makes sense. I think the fans are disappointed just because, they think they still technically have a chance. You're playing Easton Stick and the Chargers. That's a winnable game. And then the Raiders, who knows? You could win that game, finish 9-8. And if a lot of things go your way, maybe you somehow squeak in. But, losing to the Patriots definitely, sealed his fate. They should have won that game. But again, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick owns Sean Payton. And we saw that once again. So you look at what Russ is going to finish with. So he passed for a little over 3,000 yards. So he passed for 3,070 yards, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and a 98 QB rating. He also had 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. So the numbers aren't bad. Now, where can he go? Well, there's plenty of teams that need a quarterback. You could look at, the Titans. They might keep Will Levis, but I know that was one team that people were maybe thinking about. The Falcons. The Falcons definitely could be a team that he could go to. There was a list that I saw on social media. Falcons are one of them. The Giants, you could throw them in there too. There are some teams out there that could need a quarterback. Maybe even... Actually, no, I shouldn't say the Colts because they got Anthony Richardson coming back. But the Falcons and the Giants, more so the Falcons, because, or maybe the Vikings, we'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And, Russell Wilson tweeted something out last night with all the speculation that he was going to be cut. He's going to be cut after the season, it seems. So, this was a failure, this trade, because, again, when it first went down, I thought the Broncos were going to be a really good team, but that just never really happened. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett was not a good head coach. Russ did not have a good year. And again, was better this year, but still, the offense, there was always something off, and especially when you get into shootouts with a lot of these teams. Like when they got into a shootout with, well, not really a shootout, but, when you're going up against, like, when they went up against the Texans, and the Texans, were up, you just never felt like the Broncos were going to win that game. I mean, it ended up being a close game, and they were going down the field to win the game, but then Russ threw the interception in the end zone to Troutman when he was trying to hit Troutman. You just never really felt like they were going to win that game. I mean, the Lions too. I mean, once it was 14-0. I mean, the Broncos weren't coming back. They can't. They're a team that can't play from behind. So it just, if they're, like I said, if they got to get in a shootout, they're not going to win that game. But he's I don't think he's the main problem here. You look at the wide receivers. I mean, Sutton had a good year, but you don't really look at them as some top wide receivers in the league. The running game's kind of been a disappointment. Javonte Williams really hasn't. Again, I think give him another year, to recover from the ACL, and then maybe he'll be back to how he was before the injury. Yeah, I mean, and the defense, still hasn't. It definitely has been better since the 70-point game against the Dolphins, but still, it's got its issues. So, but it's going to be rebuilt in Sean Payton's image, And again, he inherited Russell Wilson, and you could tell that relationship really wasn't the best, especially when you saw, against the Lions, him yelling at, Russ on the sideline. So, yeah, it always seemed like it never really was a good fit. And now Russ is going to have to find a new home, and he'll get picked up by somebody. Somebody's going to pick him up. I think he definitely still has gas left in the tank. Maybe in the right situation, but it just wasn't a good fit here, And if he goes somewhere else and he pretty much does the same thing like he did in Denver, then you really got to look at Seattle and be like, well, they really turned him into. They were really the reason why he was successful. But I mean, he's getting older now. He's in his mid-30s. I mean, I think he still has gas left in the tank, but how much really? But yeah, the Broncos. It looks like they're not going to the playoffs once again. Again, a disappointing end to this because again, you expected better. You really did, but things just kind of went backwards. And now Sean Payton's there, and he's going to try to, rebuild this team. Again, in his own image, they're going to get their quarterback. I don't know how they're going to do that, but we'll see. But it doesn't look like Russell Wilson is going to be a part of that, and he will be looking for a new home in 2024, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But let me know what you guys think. Where does Russell Wilson end up if he is cut by the Broncos? Well, most likely going to get cut, but where does he end up if it's not with the Broncos? So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the power rankings that are released this week. I'll go through them. I'll give you my thoughts on them, and that is what we will do when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to go through the power rankings that were released this week. I'll give you my thoughts on them, and that is what we will do here. So, 32 is the Panthers, no surprise there. Although they did put up 30 points this past week against the Packers, who aren't a good defense. But you know what? At least it's something, because this offense really has just struggled to put up points all year. And it's nice to see that Bryce Young had a good game. I mean, obviously, give them another year. Give him another year. Surround him with some more talent and see if he really is the guy. But very disappointing rookie season for him. 31, you got the Commanders. They did make things interesting against the Jets. I mean, they were down 20-0, 27-7. They came back. Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter this week, but Sam Howell was another guy where, he looked at him and said, hey, maybe the Commanders have something with him, but really has struggled in recent weeks. The Commanders just are a mess right now. Their defense is really bad. So, I mean, I don't know what the future is going to hold for him and the Commanders in general, but, yeah, they're at 31. You got the Cardinals at 30. Again, they struggled against the Bears on Sunday. I thought they would win a couple more, some more games with Kyler being back, but yeah, I mean, it looks like they might not win, any of their remaining games. I mean, we'll see. I mean, they play the Eagles, which I think they'll probably lose. Seattle, I mean, they could win that, but I don't know. So they're probably going to finish with a 3-14 record, but yeah, they're at 30. Patriots at 29. Listen, they've been playing spoiler. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Broncos. So, at least they kind of showed a little bit of a pulse here towards the end of the year, winning some games. Now they got Buffalo coming up. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Buffalo is dealing with a lot of injuries on defense, and Patriots defense is still good. So they could definitely give the Bills some problems on Sunday. But yeah, they're at 29. 28's the Giants, 5-10. Hey, they were competitive against Philly in Philly. They surprised me, but again, they kind of benefited from some mistakes by the Eagles and the fact that the Eagles secondary is not very good this year. They were kind of gifted some of their points, but you know what? I have faith in Joe Shane and Brian Dable. I think the Giants are going to be okay, but it's just another disappointing year. And like I said, I mean, after week 1, I was like, yeah, this season's over. And yeah, I was pretty much right. So then you got the Chargers at 27. Hey, they were competitive against the Bills. So that goes to show you. You fire your head coach and your team responds. And yeah, they did. They did, even though they lost. Now they got a chance to win a game against the Broncos with Jared Stidham starting. Titans at 26. Disappointing loss to the Seahawks. Ryan Tannehill started the game against the Seahawks. But yeah, they're 5-10 right now. They're in a rebuild. I mean, it's and we'll see what happens with Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think he sticks around, but yeah, I mean the Titans, they are not a very good team this year. The Jets at 25. Surprised they actually moved up a spot. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because they did win, but I mean they could have very easily lost that game against the Commanders, but they're lucky that they have a kicker in Greg Zuerlein that they could trust, and they were able to still win the game. But the Jets, it's a season of what could have been if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt. The Bears at 24 at 6-9. Yeah, I mean, they started off the season 0-4. They've gone 6-5 since. I mean, listen, Justin Fields isn't playing bad. The defense really has been, a huge part of the turnaround. They're forcing turnovers. I mean, the Montez Sweat trade has really paid off for them. Listen, good draft and maybe, add some more free agents. This team's going to be good next year, but we'll see. It really all depends on what they do at quarterback. Are they going to keep Justin Fields? Are they going to move off of him and go to a different quarterback? That remains to be seen. I think he's played okay. The Bears supposedly love, the locker room loves Justin Fields, so maybe, they continue to build around him and maybe draft Marvin Harrison Jr. It's possible, but we'll just have to wait and see. Saints at 23. They dropped the Thursday night game against the Rams. They're They have to beat the Bucs on Sunday, to keep pace in the NFC South. But the Bucs have been rolling, so it's going to be a really tough game. Broncos dropped down, 8 spots here. They're 7-8, and yeah, they're kind of just. I know we talked about them. They're still technically in it, but now starting Jared Stidham, you're basically punting on the season. But yeah, they're at 22. The Raiders jumped up a couple of spots to 21, winning an unlikely game in Arrowhead. And actually, it's kind of crazy. This is something I didn't say when talking about this game, but they did not complete a pass after the first quarter. That is unbelievable. They didn't complete a pass after the first quarter, and they still won the game. But they got helped out by the Chiefs with 2 defensive touchdowns. But you got to give them credit. And listen, I think Antonio Pierce deserves this job. I really do. And if they don't keep him around, they're making a mistake. Got the Falcons at 20. Impressive win against the Colts. I actually took the Falcons. They're still in it, but I think they're going to fall a little bit short. I mean, that's a team that's going to need a quarterback, and maybe they could trade for Justin Fields if the Bears move off of him. They can maybe sign Russell Wilson, or they're going to draft one. I mean, they have a lot of talent on this team. They just need a quarterback. So, 19, you got the Packers. I mean, they almost blew it against the Panthers. They're going to be playing against the Vikings, who are at 18. I don't know what the Vikings are going to do at quarterback on Sunday. But regardless, I mean, whoever they start is going to torch this Packers defense. The Packers defense is really bad. And they're going to be without Jair Alexander, who got suspended because of the whole thing with the coin toss at the beginning of the game. He wasn't supposed to be out there, but he went out there anyways. So, yeah. But listen, Jordan Love, he looks like the guy for the Packers. And for the Vikings, I mean, we'll see what they do. I mean, are they going to bring back Kirk Cousins? Coming off of the Achilles injury, we'll have to wait and see. Steelers at 17, impressive win against the Bengals. I mean, they shredded that defense, and that was the defense I started in my redraft league. And maybe if I didn't do that, I probably would have won because the Bengals defense ended up getting me -1 point. -1 points. If I started any other defense, I probably would have won because I ended up losing by a point. And also, I didn't start George Pickens in those leagues too that I was in the playoffs. So if I started him, I would have won both. But again, you have no idea that he was. You had no idea he was going to have the performance that he had. The Seahawks are at 16, 8-7. Big comeback win against the Titans. They got the Steelers this week. And then they got the Cardinals to finish out the year. So they could win their next 2 and maybe get into the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. Colts are at 15. Tough loss against the Falcons. I mean, they went down the field on their first drive, but after that they just really couldn't do much. So we'll see what happens this week. They're playing the Raiders, and then they play the Texans to finish out the year. So those are big games. You win those 2 and you're in. So then you got the Bengals slightly ahead of them, dropped down a couple of spots. Jake Browning kind of came back to reality against the Steelers. It doesn't get any easier. You're playing against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, but with the Chiefs and their struggles, and the Bengals, they played the Chiefs so many times. I mean, they're going to be without Burrow and probably Chase again, but I think they got a shot to maybe pull off the upset, maybe. But we'll see. Then you got the Jags at 13. I mean, that's another team that's struggling. We'll see if Trevor Lawrence ends up playing. Texans are at 12. They're most likely getting C.J. Stroud back, which is huge. That's a team that I like to get into the playoffs. Then you got the Rams at 11. They went up 5 spots. Yeah, I mean, I would put them ahead of the Bucs. Actually, they got the Bucs at 10. I actually would put the Rams ahead of them. But these are 2 teams that are playing really good football right now. Matthew Stafford and his offense, Baker Mayfield and his offense, those are 2 quarterbacks that have really, turned it up as we get closer to the playoffs. So they're at 11 and 10. You got the Chiefs all the way down at 9. I mean, I can't really disagree with that. Turning the ball over, Can't really get anything going on offense. I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem. And, yeah, you got to worry about them because usually they would figure it out. It doesn't seem like they're going to figure it out. And you got the playoffs coming up. I mean, this team might finish. I mean, they should be able to win their last 2 games against Jake Browning and Easton Stick. But, who knows? They couldn't beat Aiden O'Connell, who didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. So it's like, you don't know. But the problem is the Chiefs beat themselves in this game. I mean, they got to stop with some of these fake handoff plays and stuff. Just run your offense. I mean, the pick six, that's different. But the touchdown before that, I mean, you got Pacheco handing it off to Mahomes, and they fumble it on the exchange. I mean, what are we doing? They got to tone it down sometimes with that. But anyways, you got the Browns at 8. Can't disagree with that. Joe Flacco playing some good football. Turnovers, again, are an issue, but the Browns are still winning games. So as long as they're doing that, you'll live with it. The Bills are at 7. Listen, they went out, they're in, and they are going to be a very dangerous team if they get in, which I think they should. I mean, they're lucky they beat the Chargers, though. That was getting dicey. Now you got the Patriots at home, which could give you problems, but I still think the Bills are going to win that game. And then it's going to come down to them playing the Dolphins. So we'll see what happens there. Cowboys at 6. Yeah, can't complain there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of weird having them ranked over the Bills when the Bills destroyed them. But, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that too much. Actually, I would put the Cowboys over the Lions. But we'll see what happens this week when these two teams play against each other. Then you got the Eagles at 4. I mean, I would put the Cowboys and the Eagles ahead of the Lions, actually. I would switch these around a little bit. The Dolphins, I think, yeah. So between 3 through 6, I'd probably reorganize the teams. Because I mean, even though the Dolphins did beat the Cowboys, so I'd probably rearrange. I'd probably put the Cowboys ahead of the Eagles and the Lions. Then you put the Dolphins at 3. Niners move down to 2. Ravens move up to 1. Can't complain with that. Because, I mean, the Ravens looked like the much better team against the Niners. But, again, it's one game. They are still the top 2 teams in the NFL. It's just the Ravens, on Monday they own the Niners. So yeah, those are the power rankings for this week. Some disagreements. I put the Cowboys ahead of the Eagles and the Lions, but we'll find out this weekend. With the Lions, how the Lions and the Cowboys match up against each other. So before we go to break again, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we are going to talk about the current standings. We'll go over, where everything currently stands in both conferences. And that is what we'll do after our second break here. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're now going to talk about the current standings, where everything is currently as we go into Week 17 in the NFL. So, let's get right into it. So we'll start off with the AFC. So right now you got the Dolphins who clinched the playoff spot. So they're currently 2 games up on the Bills in the AFC East. The Bills, I think, will get in, although they did kind of scare me a little bit with them almost losing to Easton Stick and the Chargers. But they should get in. Now, is it going to come down to that final week of the regular season? Because, if the Dolphins lose here this week against the Ravens, Bills win, yeah, it's going to come down to that final game. But if the Dolphins win against the Ravens, they clinch the division, and that basically ends this conversation. But I think the Dolphins will lose, and then the Bills will beat the Patriots, so that'll set up that Week 18 matchup, which will likely be the late game in Week 18, and that'll decide the division. So, we'll see how it goes. And then you go to the AFC North. The Ravens, they pretty much, got the division locked up. I don't think the Browns are going to catch them. The Ravens have to drop their last 2, which I don't think is happening. I think they'll win against the Dolphins, and then we'll see, what happens after that. Do they rest their starters against the Steelers? Because I don't think... if they beat the Dolphins, then yeah, I think they pretty much, they got the 1 seed locked up. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what they do. But yeah, right now they hold a 2-game lead over the Browns. We got the Steelers and the Ravens, or Steelers and the Bengals at 8-7. 4 games back, no chance of catching up. But they got the wild card. Now we go to the AFC South, which is just insane right now because you got a 3-way tie between the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Texans. 3 teams that all lost. So I have no idea. And the Jags, they were 6-2 at one point, and you thought, yeah, this is going to be their division, but not so fast. And who knows what's going to happen with Trevor Lawrence if he's going to play? Because again, he's dealing with another injury. So we'll just have to wait and see. But you got the Jaguars. They're going to be taking on this week the Panthers, the Colts. They're taking on the Raiders, Texans. They're going to be going up against the Titans. So and the Texans are getting Stroud back. So you like their chances in that game against the Titans. The Jaguars, they really have been struggling. I don't really know what to say about them. It's just been a bad year. It went from good to bad, and they really just were never able to get consistency. That's kind of just been like the thing about this season is lack of consistency. I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. Now, if you're without Trevor Lawrence this week, if he misses, it's not going to be good. So, just have to wait and see what happens here. But it could come down to the Colts and the Texans for the division the final week of the season. So, then you got the AFC West. The Chiefs, 2-game lead up on the Broncos and the Raiders. Now, if the Chiefs lose their last 2 games and the Raiders win out, the Raiders win the division. Chiefs could maybe find themselves on the outside looking in somehow, which I don't see happening. But I don't know. They just really don't look right. But I think they should be able to win these last 2 against backup quarterbacks and get in. But, who knows what happens after that, So then we go over to the NFC. So the Eagles currently hold a 1-game lead over the Cowboys in the NFC East. They're at 11-4. Cowboys at 10-5. Yeah, the Eagles got the Cardinals and the Giants again. They should win both of those games, win the division. The Cowboys, they got the Lions and the Commanders. Cowboys are going to be the 5 seed. Eagles are going to be the either the 2 or the 3. But yeah, I mean they should win their final 2 games. And again, if they don't, I mean, listen, the Giants, they almost gave that game away to the Giants, but they're lucky they were playing the Giants. Because again, if they were playing a better team, they would have lost. So we go to the NFC North. The Lions obviously clinched the division. You still got the Packers and the Vikings at 7-8 trying to get into the playoffs. The Bears actually still have a chance of making the playoffs too, I believe, at 6-9, but they're not going to get in. But again, the Lions win their first division title, not NFC North title. I said NFC North, but it was because it used to be the NFC Central. So they won their first division title in 30 years. But again, congratulations to the Lions. It's been a long time. And let's see if they can win a playoff game. So then we go to our favorite division, the NFC South. Bucks at 8-7, rolling. And then you got the Falcons and the Saints at 7-8. I mean, the Bucks, all they got to do is win, and they're in. So, and the Saints, they have not been good this year. That's another team that just has not been able to find consistency. The defense has not been as good as in years past. So I mean, I think the Bucks should win, but who knows? The Saints are desperate. It could be a close game. I know the last time these two teams met was way back earlier in the season. Baker Mayfield threw 3 touchdowns, and you thought, maybe the Bucks are going to be decent. And then they went on that big losing streak. And now they're on the come-up again, which is good. And I hope Baker Mayfield and the Bucks get it done. And they're able to host a playoff game. Now, they probably aren't going to win it, but we'll see. We'll see. They got to get in. They got to get in first. So I'm looking ahead. Then we go to the NFC West. Niners, huge loss. Kind of a blowout loss, not really, against the Ravens. Still one of the best teams in the NFL. Not the best team. It's just Ravens. Ravens looked like the better team on Monday at least. But yeah, they pretty much got they have the division wrapped up. So you really look at the Rams and the Seahawks. They're fighting for the wild card. So let's go over to the wild card. So right now, with the seeding, so in the AFC, you got the Ravens at the 1, Dolphins at the 2, Chiefs at the 3. Jags at the 4, Browns at the 5, Bills at the 6, Colts at the 7. In the NFC, you got the Niners at the 1, the Eagles at the 2, Lions at the 3, Bucks at the 4, Cowboys at the 5, Rams at the 6, Seahawks at the 7. Niners got to win their last 2 games because you got these 2 teams that are tied with them, the Eagles and the Lions. Because I don't see the Eagles losing their last 2. The Lions, I mean, they're playing the Cowboys, so that could be a loss. But yeah, I mean, the Niners, they got the Commanders and they got the Rams on their schedule. So, listen, it's going to be tough for the Rams because, they got the Giants, who I think they should win this week. But then you got the Niners after that. And if the Niners are playing for the 1 seed, that's a place that you haven't really won in quite some time. That's giving you problems. So, I don't know. I mean, are they going to be able to get in? I mean, I think so. Because, they got the tiebreaker over Seattle. I mean, the Vikings, they got their quarterback issues. The Falcons have their quarterback issues. The Saints. I mean, I think the Rams win here against the Giants this week. So I think they should be able to get in, even if they lose to the Niners. But, I mean, this all depends on these final 2 weeks here. But yeah, and then you got Seattle, of course, at 8-7. I mean, they got the Steelers and the Cardinals to finish off the year. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so in the AFC, you got the Colts at 8-7, the Texans at 8-7, the Steelers at 8-7, Bengals at 8-7, Raiders at 7-8, Broncos at 7-8. I mean, listen, I like the Texans to get in. But they could get in as the division champs instead of the wild card. So maybe if the Jags, if Trevor Lawrence ends up missing this week and they lose to the Panthers and then the week after they lose again, I mean maybe you see the Colts and the Texans get in and the Jags are the team that's out. But I think it's too little too late for the Broncos. They punted on the season. Raiders, I think it's too little too late. Bengals, I mean, they really hurt their chances by losing to the Steelers. So I don't think they're going to get in. The Steelers, I think, are going to be on the outside looking in, unfortunately for them. Especially losing to the Cardinals and the Patriots in back-to-back weeks at home. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to give up on the Jags, but again, if Trevor Lawrence is out, I mean, I think the Texans and the Colts get in, and the Bills, I think, definitely get in, because right now they're the 6th seed. So, and I think with the win over the Patriots, I mean, they're basically, they're basically in. So, we'll see. But anything can happen. So, I mean, I think the Ravens, they'll end up with the 1 seed. Niners, I think, end up with the 1 seed. I mean, it's going to be crazy. So the Chiefs look like they're going to be the 3 seed, which is weird, because you just never thought that was going to be, I shouldn't say never, but you're going to see Patrick Mahomes playing in in a road playoff game possibly, which is going to be weird unless they get knocked out by So they're in line to play the Bills, which, I mean, that is going to be so tough if they have to play against the Bills in the first round. So the Dolphins will play the Colts, the Chiefs will play the Bills, and then you got the Jags. Right now, they'd be playing the Browns. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And then in the NFC, the Eagles would be playing the Seahawks. The Lions would be playing the Rams, and then you got the Bucs playing the Cowboys. I really hope we get Rams-Lions. That would be unbelievable if we can get that matchup. But we're not quite there yet. So hopefully the Rams, they can win this week, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I just don't want to see Nick Mullins and Taylor Heineke starting in playoff games. I mean, I was kind of hoping the Packers were going to get in, but then they lost to the Giants, and they lost to the Bucs at home. I mean, they got the Vikings and the Bears. I mean, both games are going to be tough just because their defense has been so bad. The offense really hasn't been the problem. It's their defense. So, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Again, it's going to be a crazy final 2 weeks of the regular season. So, buckle up, because it's going to be insane. And then we get to the playoffs, and then it's really anybody's game at that point. So, let me know what you guys think about the playoff picture, though, the current standings. Who do you think is going to get in the wild card for both of these conferences? Because, again, it's not really clear as to who it's going to be. Anything can happen these final 2 weeks. So, when we get back from our final break of the show, we're going to preview the beginning of Week 17, which is a game between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, with the Browns, if they win, they're in, which I think most likely will happen tonight, but we'll get into the reasons why. Again, you got to respect the Jets' defense, but I kind of think the Browns got this one, but we'll see. But that is what we will do. That is what we will discuss when we get back from our final break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to preview tonight's game between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. Obviously not, the best Thursday night game. But, obviously this gets us started here in Week 17. So right now, the over-under is 34. The Browns are 7.5-point favorites against the Jets. The Browns, they're in a great spot. You win and you're in, 10-5. This has been a very interesting year for them. You start off with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, then you go to P.J. Walker, you go to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, and now you got Joe Flacco starting and winning games for you. So it's really been a weird year for them. But credit to them. And they dealt with a lot of injuries. To their offensive line, too. Their offensive line, Nick Chubb getting hurt. They've dealt with a lot. But they've been able to keep it together, and they're winning games, and you got to give them credit. They're going to be a tough team in the playoffs. I do believe that. But again, the one thing that worries me, of course, is Flacco turning the ball over. He's got 10 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. But again, the Browns, they've been able to, continue to win games despite all that. Kind of look at the league rankings for both teams. So the Jets, 27th in passing yards per game. Browns are 19th. Browns are 11th in rushing yards per game. The Jets are 28th. The Browns are 10th in points per game, and the Jets are 30th. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Browns are number 1 against the pass. Jets are number 2 against the run. The Browns are 10th. The Jets are 24th. And then points allowed, Browns are 12th. Jets defense is 14th. And, with the Jets, they're an offense that struggles to score points. Now, they did score a lot of points, against the Commanders in Week 16, but it's because the Commanders, were beating themselves. They turned the ball over, gave the Jets good field position, and the Jets capitalized on that. Now, I was very surprised with how the Jets defense just let the Commanders get right back into the game. They just couldn't get a stop when Jacoby Brissett came into the game. And I'll be honest, if Jacoby Brissett was starting against the Jets, I would have probably taken the Commanders with the points. I thought I was sitting good with, taking the Jets, who were the favorites in the game against the Commanders, but then that ended up not being the case. I ended up being wrong. So, that's on me. But it is what it is. I like even though 7.5 is a lot of points, I do like the Browns to win and cover, just because I just don't think the Jets are going to score that many points in this game. Now, the one thing they could benefit from is Joe Flacco turning the ball over. If they could do that and capitalize on that, then this game could be close. But I don't know. I just feel like with the Browns being at home, and if Joe Flacco can limit the interceptions in this game, I just really don't see the Jets keeping up with the Browns. So I like the Browns to win and cover the spread here, just because again the Jets offense is just not good, especially with Trevor Siemian. Trevor Siemian also could turn the ball over too and give the Browns good field position. So I like the Browns here, but. Again, we'll see what happens. The Jets could somehow surprise people and, make this game, competitive when you least expect it. But again, it's possible because Flacco could turn the ball over. But again, got a quarterback on the other side that can turn the ball over too, because Siemian had a couple of turnovers against the Commanders. So, again, like I always say, we just got to wait and see, what ends up happening. But, for the Jets, they got Breece Hall going in the last game. Monster game against the, in fantasy, he was unbelievable because I went against him. But yeah, he had 20 carries for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was involved a lot in the receiving game too. They just kept checking down to him constantly. So we'll see. You rely on him. Garrett Wilson obviously was involved against the Commanders, so get him going somehow. But the checkdowns are not going to work against the Browns defense in this spot. Did against the Commanders because they aren't a good defense, but against the Browns, yeah, on the road it's not going to work as well. So I expect I think the Browns, they should win by multiple scores here, but again, I don't know, because Joe Flacco, he's thrown interceptions, and that definitely can continue in this game, because you can't disrespect the Jets defense, even though last week, I don't know what happened against the Commanders. I really don't. They should have, once they were up 20-0, it was like, oh well, the Jets defense is going to let the Commanders get back in this game, and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But listen, I love again, I've said it all along. I love the Joe Flacco story, that he's been able to step in and been able to do what he's been able to do playing these games for the Browns. They just it was a mess. Deshaun Watson getting hurt, DTR getting hurt, PJ Walker not being effective. But the Browns said, you know what, we're going to turn to Joe Flacco, and it's paid off. And we're going to be seeing Joe Flacco in January once again, which is going to be it's that nostalgia, for people that grew up watching football in the 2010s, including myself. It'll be nice to at least see one more playoff run out of Flacco. And it's funny because he's going up against the Jets. Last year when these two teams met, the Browns, they were up by a couple of scores. They were like a 6.5 point, 7.5 point underdog. The Jets were against the Browns. Browns were up by a couple of scores. And Flacco was the quarterback for the Jets at the time last year. And the Jets scored a touchdown. Flacco connected with, I think it was Corey Davis. Jets probably could have used Corey Davis this year. So that made it 30-24. Then the Jets recovered the onside kick. They get into the red zone, and Flacco connected with Garrett Wilson for a touchdown, and the Jets ended up winning the game. And I had the Browns in that game, and I ended up losing it. And I do have the Browns tonight. So now he's going up against the Jets, who are the Browns are 7.5 point favorites here. So, it's kind of funny how a year later, but how it all ended up. But it's just, what Flacco's been able to do. It's a great story. And again, he's in a much better situation than he was with the Jets. What he's been able to do. They got good weapons. The offensive line, even though it's dealing with a ton of injuries, and also with the running back situation too. It's been a tough year for the Browns, but they've been able to again pull it together and look where they are. But yeah, Flacco looks like a much different quarterback. Playing with the Browns as opposed to the Jets. So that really just reflects really bad on the Jets. Because they haven't been able to fix their offensive line. And that's what they got to do going into the offseason. If Rodgers is going to come back, you got to fix this offensive line. And maybe and get more weapons, because the defense is fine. Even though I'm really curious as to and puzzled as to why they just let the Commanders get back in the game. And take the lead. But yeah, going to the offseason, you got to fix this offensive line for Rodgers next year, because if you don't, he's going to get hurt again. And poor Trevor Siemian, going up against Myles Garrett tonight, it could be a long night. I'm just not taking the Jets this week. I'm done taking the Jets. No more. These last 2 weeks, I don't care what the lines are. Actually, the lines for next week haven't even come out yet, because we don't even know, what the situations are, and the times haven't been set up yet. either, because now they're gonna have another game on Saturday, and then the rest of the games on Sunday. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I just can't believe we're here already. I mean, I'm gonna say this every year, every time, and I've said this on many shows, but every time the season comes around, it comes and it goes. It goes so fast, and it stinks when it does, because you really look forward to the NFL, and but it goes really fast, and the playoffs are going to go really fast, and then then it's like, now what? Well, for me, then I'm looking forward to baseball season, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna stink when the season's over. But hey, we got the USFL and the XFL supposedly merging, so we'll talk about that, a little bit when that comes around. Yeah, it's week 17 starts tonight. Also with tomorrow, so with New Year's Day being on Monday, there's going to be no show again. So we'll preview, all the big college games, because obviously the college football playoff is on Monday. So we'll talk about those games as well. Obviously Alabama, Michigan, and then Texas and Washington, of course. So it's we'll have a jam-packed show tomorrow, and on top of that, we also have the GSMC baseball podcast tomorrow as well. That will also be tomorrow. Of course, the weeks are just flying. Yeah, so we'll get into that as well. We'll talk about baseball tomorrow. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up. College football playoff, NFL playoffs are going to be starting. So we'll make sure to preview all the games this week coming up, because obviously New Year's Day is Monday. And a new year is upon us already. I mean, this year has been like the fastest year of my life, honestly. I thought this year flew. And yeah, I mean, time just flies by nowadays. So hopefully we got another good year coming up in 2024. So yeah, but that's what's coming up. So we got both shows tomorrow. Football show will preview the college games as well as the NFL games this week. Got the GSMC baseball podcast, so we'll talk about, update you guys on what's going on in the off season. And yeah, but we got some big stuff coming up, here on the GSMC Sports Network. A lot of shows will be starting, within the coming weeks. So you won't just see me. You're going to see some new faces as well. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, so that's basically it with the show for today. With this Jets-Browns game, let me know what you guys think on how you think this game will unfold tonight. I got the Browns winning by more than a touchdown. They probably win this game, I don't know, 27 to 13, 27 to 10, something like that. I don't really see the Jets scoring a lot of points here. But listen, it's me, so the opposite might happen. Jets might somehow pull out a win. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. So with that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, I thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Or well, actually, for the baseball show, so that'll be 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time. Then the football show will be after that, 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys. Well, also enjoy the game tonight, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.